I will just kind of monitor them as we go. So, easy question first. What is your name and how do you spell it?
My name is Kirk Jentoft. That's KirkJentoft.
Sweet. And this is sort of another awkward journalism thing. I'll ask you a question, and then if you could repeat the question and then answer it.
So it makes the editing clearer.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Okay.
It makes you seem like you are pondering the question yourself, and there isn't some mysterious magic man standing behind the camera asking you questions.
Excellent.
But, so, first question is, what kind of games do you play?
What kind of games do I play? I play Borderlands on my PS3. I also play Lego Star Wars on the PS3. I play some Facebook games just as time killers, and the idea is I usually play first thing in the morning to get my mind alert.
No problem.
My preference for games though is strategy based and action adventure.
Cool.
So
Good stuff, good stuff. And so what this episode is about, and what brings me to your lovely office, is the question, do you think video games encourage violence in us?
that's actually something I've read a lot of research on. Do video games prompt violence in society or contribute to it? My take on it is no. I have read Gerbner, who talks about cultivation analysis, and one of his central tenets, he was looking at TV, but it's something that's very crossover, because TV violence was thought to contribute to societal violence as well, and the idea is that it doesn't. There's a couple documentaries made, Mean World Syndrome and The Electronic Storyteller, that tell what his research does, which is increased violence in video games, or portrayal of violence in video games, does not prompt people to go out and commit crimes. Rather, it gives people an expectation that crimes will occur. For instance, the elderly tend to watch more TV than youths. Therefore, they see the world as a very scary place, that they are more likely to be victims of a violent crime, when the reality is that they're the age group that is least likely to be a victim of any crime. So, do I think that video games contribute to violence in society? No. What I think violent video games do is make us afraid of one another.
Very nice, very well put.
Thank you.
I'll have to Google some of those names. Yeah. No, that's fine. So I guess one of the biggest events that really kind of made this a milestone question was like Columbine and school shootings and like that. Those guys were at home playing Doom, and like that's what really caused them to go out and do this stuff.
I played Doom. I didn't go out and shoot anybody.
Yeah, this is what they would say. But I guess the question I'm asking is, these guys weren't even supposed to be playing Doom. Do you think there's any sort of uselessness to the ratings that we see on games?
With ratings for anything, it's basically, to me, it seems like a form of censorship. So a rating system for video games is like saying we want to talk. This is our intended audience, but when you look at television, for instance, the intended audience is not the sole audience that watches these programs or plays these video games. Like you hear stories from like the 1950s of kids sneaking into porn theaters. Well, they have an intended audience of 18 plus, but kids under that were getting in that. And rating systems, I know that violence in television rating systems or movie rating systems is considered not that important compared to sex or drug references, or if there's any nudity. So, saying we're okay with dismembering the human body, but we won't show it to you, it seems an absurdity. As far as rating systems on video games, you basically have the retailer that's supposed to enforce these, right? Because there's no like police that show up at your home and say, "Oh, you've got a contraband video game." Rating systems. People have always had older siblings, cousins, kinship networks of some way. Sneaking your uncle's porn mags from him. Those have an intended audience too of 18 plus, but you could get your hands on them. The idea of underage drinking, I feel, is a much bigger problem than ratings on video games. And if you want to look for causes of the increased violence in society, I would point you to look at the economy, and that we have very few responsibilities to go with our rights.
Very nice. I guess another sort of core problem wrapped inside this violence in video games is, do you think video games are addicting? Because if they really are violent, then we can just put them down. But other people say, well, we can't put them down. They're addicting.
Lots of things are addicting. Anything that causes an endorphin rush that is addictive, potentially. When cigarettes were being said they weren't addictive, they said it's no more addictive than chocolate or exercise. Well, both of those are actually addictive because they both produce endorphin rushes. And then that's led to a point to distinguish between them, between physically addictive and mentally addictive. Really, if something is producing endorphins in your brain, it's addictive. So if you get these feelings of accomplishment, these success venues that are open in video games and are closed in real life, then yeah, video games are going to seem better than reality in a lot of ways.
Right on. Thank you very much. And final thing, just so I am not missing anything, is there anything you'd like to add to just the general topic that you were thinking about? And it could be something like Hi Mom. No pressure.
No, I think I've covered what I wanted to cover.
Sweet. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, actually, one thing. My problem with most video games is they have unrealistic expectations of reality. For instance, we know from video games that, if we're hungry, we can plant strawberries and harvest them in 5 minutes and have food. We know that, yes, there's days and nights and we have to sleep, and the time required to sleep is apparently less than 5 minutes. It gives us warped senses of what reality is. If I need money, I can just beat up somebody on the street and gold coins will come shooting out of them. Or to use earlier video games, I can just jump on them and that will, of course, squish them and produce a coin. It gives us unrealistic expectations of reality and the amount of returns based on the time we put in. I feel that's a much better take on what video games do than than reality. It's more poignant than the violence, in my opinion. But television does the same thing, because with sitcoms, know a problem will be introduced before the first commercial break, and it'll be solved before the last. That's an unrealistic expectation of everything, but that seems to go into the modernist narrative of
everything.
Everything, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And
Glad to.
Great stuff.